Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku became close friends with best jeanist early. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world was not built equally. It was a harsh truth, stitched into the fabric of society with the coarse, unbreakable thread of reality. Izuku Midoriya learned this at the age of 4. Watching his doctor lean back in a swivel chair, the squeak of the mechanism sounding like a door slamming shut on his future. 10 years later, the lesson hadn't changed. It had only become more textured, more abrasive. The mid-afternoon sun baked the asphalt of Muzurifu, creating shimmering heat hazes that distorted the distant skyline. Inside Aldera Junior High, however, the temperature felt artificially cold. The air conditioner hummed a low, monotonous drone, fighting a losing battle against the stifling atmosphere of the classroom. So, the teacher's voice was dry, a sound like paper crumpling. As third-year students, it's time to think seriously about your futures and what you want to do with your lives. He held up a stack of printouts, the weight of 30 futures in his hand. I could pass out these career aptitude tests, but... He paused, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, betraying the professional neutrality he was supposed to maintain. Why bother? I know you all want to go into the hero track. The room exploded. It was a cacophony of quirks, hands turning into stone, eyes extending on stalks, minor telekinesis rattling pencils. It was a display of individuality, a riot of color and power, save for one desk. Izuku Midoriya sat with his head down, his hands gripping the hem of his black Gakurin uniform. The fabric was stiff, cheap polyester that didn't breathe, much like Izuku himself in that moment. He tried to shrink, to fold himself into an origami shape so small that the universe would simply overlook him. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks, the teacher said, waving a hand dismissively. But using your powers at school is against the rules. Hey, teach! The voice cut through the noise like a jagged knife. Katsuki Bakugo leaned back in his chair, feet kicked up onto the desk. His posture was a declaration of war against authority. Don't lump me in with these extras. They'll be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some busted D-lister. I'm the real deal. The class erupted in outrage, but Bakugo merely scoffed, small explosions popping in his palms like celebratory firecrackers. Oh, shut up. I'm going for the top. I'm gonna surpass All Might and become the richest, most famous hero of all time. I've already aced the mock tests for UA High. UA? The teacher glanced at his clipboard. Oh, right. Midoriya wanted to go to UA too, didn't he? The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum, sucking the air out of the room. Then, the laughter came. It wasn't joyful. It was a wave of mockery that crashed over Izuku, drowning him. Midoriya? No way. You can't get into the hero course just by studying. They scrapped that rule. But there's never been a quirkless student. Izuku stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His hands were shaking. They got rid of that rule. There's no precedent, but that doesn't mean... Boom. Bakugo's hand slammed onto Izuku's desk, the force of the explosion sending Izuku tumbling backward. He hit the floor hard, the air knocked out of him. Hey, Deku! Bakugo loomed over him, smoke curling from his palms. The smell of burnt sugar and nitroglycerin filled Izuku's nose, the scent of fear. You're below the rejects. You're quirkless. How can you even stand in the same ring as me? Wait, no, Kaken. Izuku scrambled back, his back hitting the wall. I'm not trying to compete with you. I swear. It's been my dream since I was little. And well, I won't know unless I try. Try? Bakugo's eyes narrowed, red irises glowing with genuine malice. Try what? Taking the entrance exam just for fun? What can you do? You're defenseless. You just die. The rest of the day passed in a blur of gray noise. Izuku moved through the halls like a ghost, haunting his own life. When the final bell rang, he felt a momentary spark of relief. He just wanted to go home, open his notebook, and lose himself in the analysis of heroes, the one place where logic and strategy mattered more than raw power. He was packing his bag, sliding his hero analysis for the future number 13 into his backpack, when the book was snatched from his hands. We're not done talking, Deku, Bakugo said, holding the notebook up. Kaken, please, Izuku pleaded, reaching out. Give it back. Bakugo looked at the cover. Hero analysis for the future? Seriously? He clapped his hands together, the notebook sandwiched between his palms. A sharp explosion detonated. Izuku watched in horror as smoke billowed out. Bakugo tossed the charred, smoking remains of the notebook out the open window. No. Izuku whispered. Most top-tier heroes have stories about them from their school days, Bakugo said, his voice terrifyingly casual. I want to be the only one from this garbage dump of a school to make it to UA. It's about my ego, you know? He placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. It was hot, searing through the uniform. So don't even apply, nerd. Bakugo turned to leave, his lackeys trailing behind him, snickering. At the door, he stopped. He looked back over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. You know, if you want to be a hero that badly, there might be another way. Izuku looked up, hope, foolish, desperate hope, flaring in his chest. Just pray you'll be born with a quirk in your next life, Bakugo said, pointing a finger at the window, and take a swan dive off the roof of the building. The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Izuku stood frozen. His mouth opened, a retort dying on his tongue before it could be born. He turned to face Bakugo, trembling, but Bakugo's hands sparked with menacing pops. Izuku looked away. He said nothing. He did nothing, because he knew, deep down, that Bakugo was right about the power dynamic. In this world, the strong dictated reality, and the weak just had to live in it. Outside, the koi pond was murky. Izuku fished his notebook out of the water. The fish were nibbling at the burned edges. Stupid fish, he muttered, shaking the water off the pages. That's not food. He walked home, taking the long route to avoid running into anyone. The words echoed in his skull. Swan dive. Swan dive. Idiot, Izuku whispered to himself, clutching the damp notebook to his chest. If I actually jumped, that would be inciting suicide. You could get arrested for that, Kaken. He tried to force a laugh, but it came out as a ragged gasp. He walked into the pedestrian underpass, the shadows lengthening around him. The air here was cooler, damp and smelling of mildew. He started to mutter, a habit he developed to fill the silence of his own loneliness. It's okay. I just have to look forward. The results aren't everything. I can. The sewer grate behind him rattled. He didn't hear it over his own muttering until the sound of wet, shifting liquid filled the tunnel. He turned, his eyes widening. A massive, fluid entity rose from the grate. It was a nightmare of sludge, a sentient oil slick with manic, bulging eyes. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain hissed, his voice bubbling and distorted. Izuku froze. His legs, usually so quick to run from bullies, refused to move. Don't worry, the sludge lunged. I'm just going to take over your body. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. The impact was like being hit by a tidal wave of sewage. The sludge forced itself into Izuku's mouth, his nose. He clawed at the fluid, but his fingers passed harmlessly through the villain's body. He couldn't breathe. I'm dying, Izuku thought, panic flaring white-hot in his mind. This is it. I'm going to die here, in a sewer tunnel, without ever saving anyone. His vision began to spot with black. The villain's laughter was a dull roar in his ears. Somebody help. Then, the manhole cover erupted. Have no fear. The voice was booming, powerful enough to shake the concrete walls. It was a voice Izuku had listened to on YouTube clips 1,000 times. Because I am here. Through the fading vignette of his vision, Izuku saw a figure, large, muscular, radiating an aura of invincible strength, step out of the shadows. The figure drew back a fist. Texas. Smash! The wind pressure alone was enough to tear the sludge apart. The villain shrieked as he was scattered against the walls. Izuku was blown back, hitting the ground, gulping in sweet, precious air before darkness finally took him. Tsunaga Hakamata, known to the world as the fiber hero, best jeanist, was bored. He stood on a temporary stage in the center of the Tateyama shopping district, a microphone in his hand. He was wearing his signature high-collared denim costume, his blonde hair combed perfectly to the side. The crowd was substantial, mostly young women and fashion enthusiasts. But the event itself was tedious. The integrity of a hero, jeanist said, his voice smooth and cultivated, is much like the weave of a good denim. It must be tight. It must be durable. And above all, it must have style. He paused for applause, which came on cue. You can have all the power in the world, he continued, eyes scanning the crowd, but if you present yourself as a frayed mess, society will unravel around you. Appearance is discipline. Discipline is safety. He checked his watch discreetly. 20 more minutes of QA, then a handshake event, then he could go back to Tokyo. He respected the Mizudafa Police Department for inviting him for their community outreach week, but the fashion sense in the suburb was appalled. He had counted 17 people wearing socks with sandals in the last hour alone. It was physically painful for him. Mr. Jeanist. A reporter raised a hand. With All Might's activity declining slightly in this prefecture, do you feel the pressure for the top 5 to step up? Jeanist adjusted his collar. All Might is a pillar. A pillar holds the roof. But a house also needs walls, floors, and tapestries. We, the other heroes, provide the texture of safety. I do not feel pressure, I feel tension. And tension, properly applied, creates strength. A sudden vibration in the ground cut him off. A few blocks away, a plume of black smoke rose into the sky. Jeanist's eyes narrowed. The crowd gasped, turning toward the disturbance. Stay calm, Jeanist commanded, his voice projecting without shouting. Please evacuate the street in an orderly fashion. Panicking causes wrinkles in the evacuation plan. He leaped from the stage, using his quirk, Fiber Master, to manipulate the denim cables at his waist. They shot out, latching onto a streetlight, and swung him toward the smoke. He moved with an elegance that defied the chaos. He didn't run, he glided, swinging through the air like a pendulum. As he landed on a rooftop overlooking the scene, he analyzed the situation instantly. The tattoo district. Fires burning. A villain made of sludge holding a hostage. Troublesome, Jeanist muttered. Liquid types are notoriously difficult to bind. The fibers slip. He looked down at the street. Heroes were already there. Death Arms. Kamui Woods. Empty Lady. They were standing around, looking helpless. The villain has a hostage. Death Arms yelled. I can't get close without blowing the kid up. I have no room to grow. Empty Lady complained. Jeanist sighed, the sound sharp through his nose. Inefficient. They are staring at a tear in the fabric and complaining they have no needle, instead of improvising. He prepared to descend, his mind calculating the tensile strength needed to restrain a fluid body. He would need to target the clothes of the hostage to pull him out, or perhaps weave a net fine enough to create surface tension. Then, he saw it, a boy. A plain, green-haired boy in a middle school uniform. He looked terrified. He was clutching a strap of his backpack so hard his knuckles were white. He was standing behind the police line, and then, without a scream, without a quirk activation, the boy ran. Izuku didn't know why his feet moved. He had just had his dreams crushed by All Might on a rooftop 10 minutes ago. You can't be a hero without a quirk. The words were still carving hollow spaces inside his chest. He was walking home to give up, to burn the rest of his notebooks, to study for a general business degree. But then he saw the eyes, Bakugo's eyes. Terrified. Pleading, Izuku broke through the police line. Hey! Come back here, you idiot! Death Arms shouted. Izuku didn't hear him. The world narrowed down to the sludge villain. The monster that had almost killed him. The monster he had accidentally set free by grabbing onto All Might's leg. This is my fault. You again? The villain roared. Izuku's mind was blank, yet moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. What do I do? What do I do? He pulled his backpack off his shoulder and swung it. It was a desperate, flailing motion. The bag flew through the air, the zipper bursting open. Pencil cases and textbooks scattered. By pure luck, the metal tip of a mechanical pencil flew directly into the sludge villain's eye. Arg! The villain recoiled, the fluid hold on Bakugo's mouth loosening for a fraction of a second. Izuku slammed into the sludge, clawing at the muck with his bare hands. Kaken, why are you here? Bakugo gasped, coughing smoke. I don't know. Izuku yelled, tears streaming down his face. My legs moved on their own. I couldn't just watch you die. The villain recovered. The eye reformed. A massive, slimy tendril raised up, hardening into a whip. You little pest! I'll squash you both. Izuku stared at death for the second time that day. He didn't close his eyes. He braced himself, trying to shield Bakugo. I'm sorry, Mom. The tendril came down. Zip. A sound like a massive guitar string snapping echoed through the alley. The sludge tendril stopped inches from Izuku's face. It didn't stop because the villain hesitated. It stopped because it was suddenly wrapped in thousands of shimmering, denim blue threads. A hero, a calm voice descended from above, must never let his style be cramped by a lack of options. Izuku looked up. Descending from the sky on a web of cables was a man who looked more like a fashion model than a brawler. Best jeanist! The crowd screamed. Jeanist landed lightly on the pavement. His fingers twitched like a conductor leading an orchestra. The threads, unspooled from his own costume and the clothes of the bystanders, a few people yelped as their pants tightened around the sludge. This viscosity is disgusting, Jeanist critiqued, his nose wrinkling beneath his high collar. You are staining the pavement, villain. Let me go! The sludge villain struggled, trying to flow through the gaps in the threads. I think not. Jeanist clenched his fist. The fibers constricted. Carbon-reinforced denim weave, straitjacket. The sludge compressed, squeezed into a tight ball. However, the villain was strong, and liquid was hydraulic. He began to bulge, threatening to burst the threads. Jeanist gritted his teeth. He could hold him, but extracting the boys safely while maintaining the hold was a delicate operation requiring immense concentration. I can't breathe. Bakugo wheezed, the pressure of the sludge increasing as it fought the wires. Hold on, Jeanist muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. If I pull too hard, the boy breaks. If I let go, the villain escapes. Suddenly, a shadow fell over them. A massive hand grabbed the bound sludge. I really am pathetic, a deep voice rumbled. Izuku looked to his right. All Might stood there, steam rising from his body. He wasn't smiling. He looked furious, at himself. I told you not to be a hero, All Might said, blood trickling from his mouth, and here I am, watching a civilian and a fellow pro do the heavy lifting while I stood idly by. All Might gripped the trap sludge, his fingers digging into the gaps of Jeanist's wires. Jeanist! Release the tension on my signal. Jeanist's eyes widened slightly. He recognized the tone. He nodded. Understood. 3, 2, 1, release. Jeanist splayed his fingers. The wires went slack instantly. Detroit. All Might drew back his fist, the air pressure dropping, the clouds swirling above. Smash! The punch didn't hit the boys. It hit the air directly in front of the sludge villain. The wind pressure was like a cannon blast. The sludge was vaporized, scattered into droplets that rained down over the entire block. The upward draft was so powerful it punched a hole in the clouds, changing the weather instantly. Rain began to fall. Izuku sat on the pavement, stunned, soaked, and alive. The aftermath was a chaotic tapestry of flashing lights and shouting voices. The police had gathered the sludge remains. Bakugo was being treated by paramedics, surrounded by the other heroes who were praising his bravery and powerful quirk. You were amazing, kid! Death Arms slapped Bakugo on the back. That quirk is something else. You held out against a villain that even we had trouble with. On the other side of the street, Izuku sat alone on the curb. Are you insane? Kamui Wood scolded him, pointing a wooden finger in Izuku's face. You have no quirk. You could have gotten yourself killed. You interfered with professional hero work. I'm sorry, Izuku mumbled, bowing his head. You just what? Wanted to play hero? Death Arms chimed in, walking over. Leave it to the pros, kid. Recklessness isn't heroism, it's stupidity. Izuku shrank in on himself. They're right. I just got in the way. Even Jeanist had to step in because I made things worse. That is enough. The scolding stopped. The heroes turned. Best Jeanist approached, his boots clicking rhythmically on the wet pavement. He stood tall, his presence demanding attention despite being slimmer than Death Arms. Jeanist? Kamui Woods blinked. We're just telling the kid the reality of the situation. You are scolding him for stepping forward when you stood still, Jeanist said coolly. He looked at the other pros. I saw the footage in my mind. You were waiting for a quirk with the right affinity. You were paralyzed by the mismatch. This boy, Jeanist gestured to Izuku with a long, elegant finger, was the only one who assessed the immediate threat to life and acted to mitigate it. But he's quirkless, Death Arms argued. He was suicidal, perhaps, Jeanist conceded. He turned his green eyes onto Izuku. Izuku flinched, expecting a harsh word. Jeanist's gaze was dissecting, analyzing every seam of Izuku's character. Boy. Stand up. Izuku scrambled to his feet, trembling. Why yes, sir. Jeanist looked him up and down. Your posture is atrocious. You hunch your shoulders as if you are apologizing for your own existence. Your uniform is ill-fitting. And your hair. Jeanist sighed. It is a bird's nest. Izuku blinked, confused. However, Jeanist continued, his voice softening just a fraction. I saw what you did. You did not run in blindly. You threw your bag to create an opening. You clawed at the villain's fluid mass to create an airway. It was crude. It was ugly. It lacked all aesthetic grace. Izuku's heart sank. But Jeanist stepped closer. It was the most heroic thing I saw today. The air left Izuku's lungs. Heroes are not defined solely by their power, young man, Jeanist said, loudly enough for Bakugo to hear across the street. They are defined by their spirit. The fabric of a hero is woven from the desire to save others, regardless of the risk to oneself. You have the raw material. But, Jeanist reached out and poked Izuku in the chest. You are a loose thread. Flailing in the wind. Without discipline, without style, without a method to your madness, you will simply snap. Jeanist pulled a card from his pocket. It was made of thick, textured denim paper with gold lettering. I am in town for 2 more days before I return to Tokyo. Come to this address tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Do not be late. And for the love of fashion, iron your shirt. Jeanist turned and walked away, his cape fluttering behind him. We have much work to do if we are to tailor you into something usable. Izuku stood there, holding the denim card, his mouth agape. Did Best Jeanist just invite me to his agency? The walk home was a daze. The sun was setting, casting long, orange shadows across the neighborhood. Izuku felt lightheaded. The roller coaster of emotions, fear, despair, terror, validation, had left him exhausted. He turned the corner toward his apartment complex. DKU, Izuku jumped. Bakugo came running around the corner, his breath ragged. He stopped a few yards away, panting. Kaken? Listen here! Bakugo yelled, pointing a finger. I never asked for your help. And you didn't save me. I was fine. I would have gotten out of there myself. Don't look down on me. You're still a quirkless failure. Don't think because some fashion-obsessed hero gave you a card that you're better than me. Bakugo turned and stomped off, his shoulders shaking with repressed rage. Izuku watched him go. For the first time, Bakugo's words didn't sting as much. They still hurt, but... Best Jeanist thinks I have potential. I am here. Wah! Izuku shrieked as All Might suddenly dashed out from a nearby alleyway, sliding to a stop in a pose. Hey All Might! Why are you here? You were surrounded by reporters. All Might coughed, a puff of blood escaping his lips. Poof! In a cloud of steam, the muscular giant vanished, replaced by the skeletal, sunken-eyed man Izuku had met on the roof. I got away from them, All Might wheezed, wiping his mouth. Young man. I have a correction to make. A correction? I told you earlier, All Might said, his voice serious, that you couldn't be a hero without a quirk. I told you to be realistic. Izuku nodded, looking down at his red shoes. I was wrong, All Might said. Izuku's head snapped up. Back there, at the scene. All Might clutched his chest. I was timid. I was worried about my time limit. I was worried about my public image. But you, a quirkless fanda, you moved when no one else did. You spurred me to act. All Might looked Izuku in the eye. The setting sun framed the hero, giving him a halo of light. Top heroes have stories about them from their school days, All Might said, echoing Bakugo's words but with a completely different meaning. Most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Tears began to pool in Izuku's eyes. That's what happened to you, isn't it? Yes, Izuku sobbed, clutching his chest. Yes, you can be a hero, All Might declared. Izuku fell to his knees, crying into the pavement. It was the validation he had waited his entire life to hear. And All Might continued, I have a proposal for you. A secret regarding my power. Izuku sniffled, wiping his eyes. Your power? Yes. All Might pointed a bony finger at him. My quirk was passed down to me like a sacred torch. And now, I deem you worthy to inherit it. Izuku's brain short-circuited. Inherit a quirk? But that's impossible. Quirks are genetic. I hide many things from the public, young Midoriya, All Might smiled. My power, one for all, is the power to transfer power. I have been looking for a successor. Someone with the right heart. I found him today. All Might extended a hand to help Izuku up. So what do you say? Will you accept my power and train to become the next symbol of peace? Izuku looked at All Might's hand. It was scarred, large, and offering him the world. Then, he felt the denim card in his pocket. Come to this address. We have work to do. 2 hands were reaching out to him. One offered him the ultimate power, the hammer to smash the world's problems. The other offered him the discipline, the needle to stitch the world together. Izuku took All Might's hand. I'll do it, Izuku said, his voice trembling but firm. I'll do whatever it takes. Excellent. All Might beamed, transforming into his muscular form for a split second to give a thumbs up before coughing blood again. We start tomorrow. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. Early morning. Izuku hesitated. About tomorrow morning. Yes? I have an appointment. All Might blinked. An appointment? With who? Izuku pulled out the denim card. Best jeanist. He wants to train me too. All Might stared at the card. He looked back at Izuku. Then, he threw his head back and laughed. It was a genuine, boisterous laugh. Best jeanist. The number 4 hero. My boy, you are popular today. This is fantastic. It is? Izuku asked, surprised. I thought, wouldn't it be a conflict? Nonsense. All Might slapped Izuku on the back, nearly knocking him over. Jeanist is a technician. He is a master of control and public image. I can teach you how to build your body and use power, but jeanist, he can teach you how to be a hero in the eyes of the people. Things I'm not always the best at explaining. All Might leaned in, whispering conspiratorially. Just, don't tell him about one for all yet. It's a secret, remember? Let him think he's training a quirkless boy who suddenly blooms late. Or tell him you're training your body for the entrance exam. But keep the nature of the power between us. Izuku nodded vigorously. Yes, sir. Then it is settled. All Might check the time. Go to your meeting with jeanist. Then meet me at the beach after school. You're going to be busy, Midoriya. The path to UA is a steep one. All Might dashed off into the twilight, leaving Izuku alone on the street. Izuku looked at his hand. He clenched it into a fist. He looked at the denim card in his other hand. For the first time in his life, the future didn't look like a blank wall. It looked like a canvas. I have to get home, Izuku muttered, breaking into a run. I need to iron my shirt. The next morning, 5:55 a.m., the temporary office Best Jeanist was renting was in a high-end district of Muzurifu. The building was glass and steel, screaming modernity. Izuku stood in front of the glass doors. He had spent 2 hours ironing his best button-down shirt. He had combed his hair, though the curls refused to fully submit. He wore his school trousers, pressed to a knife-edge crease. He took a deep breath. This is real. This is happening. He pushed the door open. Inside, the room was white and minimalist. Rolls of fabric were stacked neatly against one wall, denim of every shade, from indigo to acid wash. A mannequin stood in the corner wearing a prototype hero costume. Best Jeanist sat at a glass desk, reading a fashion magazine. He didn't look up when the bell chimed. 5:58 a.m., Jeanist said. You are early. Punctuality is the first stitch in the garment of trust. Good morning, best jeanist, sir. Izuku bowed so low his head almost hit his knees. Jeanist closed the magazine and stood up. He walked around the desk, his movements fluid. He circled Izuku, inspecting him like a tailor inspecting a suit. The shirt is ironed, Jeanist noted. Acceptable. But the collar is cheap. It wilts. He reached out and adjusted Izuku's collar, his gloved fingers precise. Chin up, Midoriya. A hero looks at the horizon, not the dirt. Izuku snapped his head up, his spine straightening. Better. Jeanist leaned back against his desk, crossing his arms. Now. Tell me. Why do you want to be a hero? And do not give me the generic to save people answer. Why you? Izuku swallowed. He thought about All Might. He thought about his mom apologizing to him when he was 4. He thought about the sludge villain. Because... Izuku started, his voice shaking. He steadied it. Because the world is scary. And when people are scared, they need to know that someone is there for them. Not just to punch the bad guy away, but to let them know everything is going to be okay. I want to be the person who holds things together when they're falling apart. Jeanist stared at him for a long moment. The silence was heavy. Then, a small smile touched the hero's lips beneath his high collar. To hold things together, Jeanist repeated. Like a thread. He walked over to the wall of fabric and pulled a spool of thick, green thread. He tossed it to Izuku. Catch. Izuku fumbled but caught it. That is your color, Jeanist said. Emerald. It stands out against the monochrome of the city. Jeanist turned back to him. I contacted your school. I have requested permission to oversee your physical conditioning alongside your studies. You are going to apply to UA, correct? Yes, sir. Good. The UA entrance exam is biased toward flashy, destructive quirks, Jeanist said with a hint of disdain. It is a brute's game, but if you enter that arena as a brute, you will be just another brick in the wall. I will teach you to be the ivy that grows through the cracks. Jeanist's eyes narrowed. I know you are quirkless, Midoriya. Or at least, you have been until now. Izuku froze. Here it comes. The lie. However, Jeanist continued, I saw the force with which you threw that bag. And I saw the desperation in your legs. Sometimes, power manifests late. Or sometimes, a hero doesn't need a quirk to be dangerous. They just need tools. Jeanist opened a drawer and pulled out a spool of carbon fiber wire. All Might is the hammer, Jeanist said, as if reading Izuku's meeting from the previous night. Endeavor is the fire. But I am the bind. I control the battlefield. I turn the villain's strength against them. He pointed at Izuku. You have 10 months until the UA exam. In the mornings you will train your body. I assume you have a regimen for that? Yes, Izuku squeaked. I found a trainer for weights. Fine. I don't care about your muscles, as long as they don't ruin the line of your suit, Jeanist dismissed. In the afternoons, and on weekends you are mine. I will teach you situational awareness. I will teach you knot theory, wire tension, and binding techniques. And most importantly, Jeanist struck a pose, one hand on his hip, the other extended elegantly. I will teach you how to make the world look at you and see a symbol. Not of peace, but of order. Izuku clutched the green thread in his hand. He felt a fire lighting in his belly, not the explosive fire of Bakugo, nor the blazing sun of All Might. It was a steady, intricate flame. Yes, sensei! Izuku shouted. Don't call me sensei, Jeanist corrected, walking back to his desk. Call me Jeanist. And for heaven's sake stop mumbling. It ruins the mystique. Izuku smiled, a genuine, confident smile. Yes, Jeanist. The thread was loose, frayed, and weak. But now, it was in the hands of a master tailor. And the weaving had begun. The alarm clock did not buzz. It did not beep. It screamed. At 4 a.m., the world was dark, silent, and indifferent to the suffering of a 14-year-old boy. Izuku Midoriya slapped the off button, his arm feeling like a lead weight. His room, once a shrine to All Might, had subtly changed over the last month. The posters were still there, the smiling, muscular giant beaming down with blinding optimism, but now, neatly folded on the chair, was a set of workout clothes that smelled faintly of salt and high-end fabric softener. Izuku sat up, his spine popping in 3 places. Step 1, he muttered, his voice raspy. Hydrate. He chugged a glass of water, his mind already dividing the day into sectors. The schedule All Might had given him, the aim to pass, American Dream Plan, was a brutalist document of physical torture. It accounted for sleep, eating, and studying down to the minute. But All Might didn't know about the other schedule. Izuku had overlaid the best jeanist refinement protocol on top of the American Dream Plan. It was a logistical nightmare. It meant Izuku wasn't just tired, he was existing in a state of perpetual, vibrating exhaustion. He looked at his hands. They were calloused, covered in small cuts from hauling trash. A hero is a vessel, he whispered, repeating the mantra All Might had given him. A hero is a tapestry, he corrected, repeating the mantra jeanist had drilled into him. He stood up, stretched, and tried to embody both. A vessel made of iron, wrapped in silk. It was time to go to the beach. Sector 1, the raw material, Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. The smell hit him a block away. It was a pungent cocktail of rotting seaweed, rusted metal, and wet cardboard. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was not a park. It was a graveyard for the things society had thrown away. Young Midoriya, All Might stood atop a pile of crushed refrigerators, striking a pose that defied the laws of physics given his skeletal form. He was in his true form today, coughing slightly into a handkerchief as the ocean breeze whipped through his baggy clothes. Good morning, All Might. Izuku jogged onto the sand, his feet sinking into the trash-laden dunes. You're 2 minutes early. Excellent enthusiasm. All Might slid down the pile, landing with a clatter of loose metal. Today, we escalate. The upper body strength is improving, but your core stability is lagging. A hero needs a core like a suspension bridge. All Might pointed to a rusted, cast iron safe half buried in the sand. It looked like it weighed as much as a small car. Move that to the truck. Izuku stared at the safe. The whole thing? The whole thing. Put your back into it. Grunt if you have to. Let the world hear your effort. Izuku approached the safe. He gripped the cold, flaky iron. He squatted, dug his heels into the sand, and pulled. Hurray-af! It didn't budge. Lower! Drive with the legs. All Might coached, circling him like a shark. Explode upward. Plus ultra! Izuku gritted his teeth. He visualized the muscles in his legs contracting. He pulled again, his face turning a shade of purple that matched the bruises on his shins. The safe shifted an inch. Yes. Again. For 3 hours, this was Izuku's world. It was a world of sweat, grime, and primal exertion. All Might's philosophy was simple. Tear the muscle fibers down so they grow back stronger. It was destruction for the sake of creation. Don't think about the weight. All Might shouted as Izuku dragged a massive truck tire through the sand. Think about saving someone. That tire is a civilian trapped under a building. Are you going to drop them? And no. Izuku wheezed, spit flying from his mouth. Then lift. Scream. Show me your spirit. By 7 a.m., Izuku was a wreck. He was covered in grease, sand, and sweat. His muscles were trembling so hard he could barely hold his water bottle. Excellent work today, All Might said, patting Izuku on the back and nearly collapsing him. You're building a foundation, my boy. One for all is a power that breaks the weak. You must be a fortress to hold it. I will be, Izuku gasped. Now off to school. Rest those muscles. Study hard. All Might transformed into his buff form for a split second to give a dazzling thumbs up, then vanished in a cloud of steam to avoid being seen by early morning joggers. Izuku stood alone on the trash heap. His body was screaming. His lungs were burning. He checked his watch. 7:15 a.m. He had exactly 45 minutes to transform from a grunt into a gentleman. Sector 2, the transition. The public restroom at the edge of the park had become Izuku's changing room. He rushed in, locking the stall door. He stripped off his ruined workout clothes, shoving them into a sealed plastic bag to contain the smell. Then, the ritual began. He used wet wipes, an industrial-sized pack, to scrub the grease and sand from his skin. He applied unscented deodorant, because Best Jeanist had once remarked that smelling like a locker room is an assault on the civilian senses. He put on his school uniform. But he didn't just put it on. Buttoned the shirt. Aligned the placket. Checked the collar stiffness. He tied his tie. He redid it 3 times until the dimple was perfectly centered. He pulled a comb from his bag and attacked his hair. The green curls were unruly, defying gravity and logic, but he managed to tame them into something that looked intentional rather than accidental. He looked in the cracked mirror. His eyes were tired, dark circles forming underneath them. But his uniform was crisp. Posture, he whispered. He rolled his shoulders back. He imagined a string attached to the crown of his head, pulling him upward. He sucked in his gut, engaging the core muscles All Might had just decimated. He stepped out of the bathroom. He wasn't the trembling boy dragging tires anymore. He was a student. He walked to Aldera Junior High, Sector 3, the classroom. The classroom was loud. The usual pre-homeroom chaos. Die, die, die. Bakugo was shouting, playing a handheld game with aggressive intensity. His feet were on his desk. Izuku walked in. Usually, this was the part where he hunched his shoulders, gripped his backpack straps, and scurried to his desk like a mouse avoiding a hawk. But today, his trapezius muscles were so sore that hunching was physically painful. So, he kept his shoulders back. He walked to his desk. He pulled out his chair. He sat down. He placed his hands on his knees. Bakugo looked up. He narrowed his eyes. Something was off. The nerd wasn't shaking. The nerd wasn't mumbling. The nerd was sitting with a back so straight it looked like he had a steel rod taped to his spine. Oh, Bakugo barked. Deku. Izuku turned his head slowly. Not a flinch. A rotation. Good morning, Kaken. The voice was calm. It wasn't confident. Izuku was still terrified of Bakugo, but it was controlled. Jeanist had taught him breathing exercises. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. What's with the zombie look? Bakugo sneered, small explosions popping in his palm. You look like you got run over by a truck. Just training, Izuku said simply. Training? Bakugo scoffed. You mean playing pretend? You think working out a little makes you a hero? A hero must be prepared, Izuku said, quoting a line from Jeanist's handbook without realizing it. Preparation prevents unraveling. Bakugo stared at him. The phrase was weird. It sounded sophisticated. And coming from Deku, it was infuriating. Don't talk down to me, you pebble! Bakugo slammed his hand on Izuku's desk. Before Izuku would have yelped. He would have thrown his hands up. Instead, Izuku's eyes tracked the explosion. He saw the soot stain the wood. He looked at the soot, then back at Bakugo. That's going to be hard to clean, Izuku noted. The class went silent. Had Midoriya just ignored Bakugo's threat? Bakugo's face twitched. You looking for a fight? No, Izuku said, turning back to the front of the room as the teacher walked in. I need to save my energy. Bakugo sat there, hands still smoking, confused. The fear was still there in Deku's eyes. Bakugo could smell it, but it was buried under layers of something else. Something rigid. It pissed him off. Sector 4, the genius office, afternoon, school ended. While other students went to clubs or arcades, and Bakugo went to the arcade to beat high scores out of spite, Izuku ran. He ran to the train station. He took the train to the upscale district. He arrived at the glass building at 3:55 p.m. He entered the genius office. The air conditioning was set to a crisp 68 degrees. The smell of ozone and freshly pressed fabric filled the air. Best Jeanist was waiting. The number 4 hero was not wearing his hero costume today. He was wearing a casual suit that likely cost more than Izuku's mother's car. He was inspecting a row of mannequins. You are 30 seconds late, Midoriya, Jeanist said without turning around. The train was delayed by a villain incident in Shiba, Izuku reported, bowing. I apologize. Excuses are like loose threads, Jeanist said, turning around. Pull on them, and the whole garment falls apart. But I accept the explanation. Now. Change. Izuku went to the back room and changed into the training suit Jeanist had provided. It was not comfortable. It was a full-body denim jumpsuit. But it wasn't normal denim. It was a heavy, raw selvage denim, stiff as cardboard. It had reinforced stitching along the spine, the shoulders, and the hips. Jeanist called it the corrector. Izuku walked out, moving like a robot. The fabric resisted every movement. If he slouched, the collar dug into his neck. If he bent his knees too much, the material pinched. The corrector, jeanist said, circling him, is designed to punish inefficiency. If you move with grace, the fabric flows. If you move with chaotic, jagged energy, like that brute All Might, the fabric fights you. Izuku grimaced. It's tight, sir. Tension, jeanist corrected. Today, we are working on presence. Jeanist walked to the center of the room. He pulled a single, long thread from his sleeve. He manipulated it with his quirk, Fiber Master, making it dance in the air like a snake. A hero is a symbol, jeanist began. All Might is a symbol of power. He is a sledgehammer. He smashes fear. But you, jeanist looked at Izuku. The boy was buffing up quickly. The shoulders were broadening. But the eyes were still anxious. You are not a sledgehammer, Midoriya. Not yet. And even if you become one, you cannot simply be a copy of All Might. The world doesn't need a second All Might. It needs something refined. Jeanist snapped his fingers. The thread shot out and wrapped around Izuku's wrist. Pulse, Jeanist said. Your heart rate is 110. Comet, I can't just breathe. The thread vibrates with your pulse. I can feel your anxiety. It makes the thread fuzzy. Jeanist walked closer. You possess a frantic energy. Your mind races. I see you muttering. I see you analyzing. That is your strength, but it is also your flaw. You broadcast your insecurity, but analyzing helps me figure out a strategy. Izuku argued weakly. Internalize it, jeanist commanded. When a tailor looks at a suit, he sees the stitches, the hem, the grain. But the customer only sees the suit. You must do the grunt work inside your head. On the outside, you must be the finished product. Jeanist pointed to a meditation cushion. Sit. Izuku sat, the denim suit protesting the bend in his hips. Close your eyes. Visualize your mind as a spool of thread. Right now, it is unraveling. It is a tangled mess on the floor. Wind it up. Tight. Uniform. Izuku closed his eyes. He tried to focus. But his mind was a storm. The beach. The trash. The safe. All Might's coughing. Bakugo's explosion. The entrance exam. One for all. Can I really do this? You are mumbling, Jeanist's voice cut through. As sorry. Don't apologize. Fix it. Suddenly Izuku felt a pressure on his lips. A thread had wrapped gently around his mouth. Silence is a texture, Jeanist whispered, his voice right by Izuku's ear. Learn to wear it. For the next 2 hours, Izuku sat in silence. His legs went numb. The denim dug into his skin. He fought the urge to fidget, to scratch, to mutter. He had to organize his mind. Wind the thread, he thought. Organize the thoughts. Put the All Might training in the red box. Put the school work in the blue box. Put the fear in the trash. It was harder than lifting the truck tire. Lifting the tire was just pain. This was control. By the time Jeanist released him, Izuku was drenched in sweat, despite barely moving. Better, Jeanist noted, inspecting the thread he had retracted. The vibration at the end was more consistent. You are learning to hold the tension without snapping. Thank you, jeanist, Izuku said, his voice hoarse. Go home. Sleep. And Midoriya? Yes? Burn those red shoes. They clash with everything. I like them, sir. Jeanist sighed, a sound of deep, existential despair. We will work on your color palette later. Dismissed. Sector 5, the loose thread, month 4. 4 months passed. The beach was halfway clean. Izuku's body was changing. The baby fat was melting away, replaced by dense, corded muscle. But the real change was in the integration. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Izuku was at the beach, hauling a massive bundle of scrap metal bound together with rope. All Might was watching from the seawall. He's lifting it differently, All Might muttered to himself. Usually, Izuku would heave, jerk, and strain. But today, Izuku approached the bundle. He checked the ropes. He adjusted his grip. He squatted. His back was perfectly straight. He didn't look down at the sand, He looked at the horizon, he inhaled. He exhaled, and he lifted. It was a smooth, fluid motion. He didn't waste energy on unnecessary jerking. He locked his core, creating a stable column, and let his legs do the work. Incredible, All Might whispered. He's applying leverage instinctively. He's not fighting the weight, he's managing it. Izuku dumped the metal into the truck. He wiped his brow, not with a dirty sleeve, but with a handkerchief he pulled from his pocket. Young Midoriya! All Might called out. Izuku jogged over. Yes, All Might? Your form. It's improved drastically. You look taller. Best jeanist says that height is 20% genetics and 80% presentation, Izuku said with a small smile. He makes me walk with a book on my head while reciting the hero code of conduct. All Might laughed, a booming sound that scared a flock of seagulls. Ha! A book. I used to carry boulders on my back. Different times, different methods. But it's working. You are becoming a proper vessel. Izuku looked at his hands. All Might. Jeanist talks about tension a lot. About how a hero has to hold the tension of society. Yes? Is that what One for All feels like? Tension? All Might stopped smiling. He looked at the ocean. One for All is a torrent. It is a raging river held back by a dam. If the dam has cracks, the river breaks through and destroys the village. Your body is the dam. Your mind is the floodgate operator. All Might placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Jeanist is teaching you how to build the dam without cracks. I am teaching you how to deepen the reservoir. You need both. Izuku nodded. The duality was starting to make sense. One for All was the chaos. Jeanist was the order. Sector 6, the fraying edges, month 7. The pressure was mounting. The entrance exam was 3 months away. At school, the atmosphere was tense. Career counseling was in full swing. Bakugo was getting worse. His patience was eroding as the exam date approached. He needed to prove he was the best. And Izuku. Izuku was annoying him by simply existing. It happened during lunch. Izuku was eating a bento box, balanced nutritionally by Jeanist's personal dietitian, and reading a textbook on advanced physics. Bakugo slammed his tray down on the table. You're still applying, Bakugo stated. It wasn't a question. Izuku looked up. He chewed, swallowed, and wiped his mouth. Yes. I told you to quit, Bakugo hissed, leaning in. I told you that you'd die, and I heard you, Izuku said calmly. But I disagree with your assessment. The cafeteria went quiet. People were watching. You disagree? Bakugo's hands started to smoke. You think because you've been doing some yoga with a fashion hero that you can stand in the ring with me? I think, Izuku said, closing his book, that a hero's worth isn't determined by how loud his explosions are, but by how well he holds his ground. Bakugo snapped. He swung. A right hook, fueled by an explosion. It was fast. Bakugo was a prodigy, but Izuku had spent 7 months wearing the corrector. He had spent 7 months dodging massive appliances slipping from piles of trash. He had spent 7 months having high-speed denim cables whipped at him by the number 4 hero. Izuku didn't panic. He didn't flinch. He saw the shift in Bakugo's shoulder. He saw the spark. Izuku pivoted. He didn't block. His arms weren't strong enough to tank an explosion yet. He shifted his center of gravity, swaying his upper body back just enough. The explosion detonated inches from his nose. The heat singed his eyelashes, but it missed. Izuku used the momentum to slide out of his chair and stand up, putting the table between them. Your swing was wide, Kaken, Izuku said, his heart hammering against his ribs but his voice steady. You telegraphed it. You put too much tension in your shoulder before the strike. Bakugo stared at his own hand, then at Izuku. He was shaking. Not with fear, but with apoplectic rage. You analyzed me? I analyze everyone, Izuku said. It's how I learn. I'll kill you! Bakugo roared, climbing over the table. Mr. Bakugo! The teacher's voice rang out. Principal's office. Now! Bakugo froze. He glared at Izuku with pure hatred. This isn't over, Deku. In the exam. I'm going to crush you. I'm going to turn you into ash. Bakugo stormed off. Izuku stood there. His legs felt like jelly. He sat back down. Midoriya, you okay? A classmate asked, looking at him with new respect. You just dodged Bakugo. I got lucky, Izuku lied, but he knew it wasn't luck. It was the weave. He had seen the pattern of the attack, and he had slipped through the gap. Sector 7, the final stitch, month 9. The snow began to fall in February. The beach was almost clear. The mountains of trash were gone, replaced by golden sands in the dark, churning winter ocean. Izuku stood in the genius office. He was wearing his school uniform, but it fit differently now. His shoulders filled the fabric. His neck was thick with muscle. Jeanist walked around him, holding a pair of shears. The physical vessel is ready, Jeanist said. All Might has done his work. You are a tank disguised as a student. I feel ready, Jeanist, Izuku said. Not quite. There is one last thing. Jeanist reached up and touched Izuku's hair. This, Jeanist said with disdain. It is still a mess. I can't change it too much. Mom likes it, Izuku defended. I am not asking for a buzz cut. I am asking for intentionality. Jeanist snipped. He trimmed the sides, tightening the silhouette. He left the top curly and wild, but he shaped it so it swept back slightly, revealing Izuku's forehead. The eyes are the window to the hero's soul, Jeanist said. Stop hiding them behind bangs. He stepped back. Look! Izuku looked in the mirror. The boy staring back wasn't the trembling victim from 10 months ago. He was sharp. The undercut on the sides gave him a more aerodynamic look. The curls on top were still green and wild, but they looked styled, like a deliberate choice. His posture was impeccable. He looked cool. Now, Jeanist said, walking to his desk. He picked up a package wrapped in brown paper. A graduation gift. Before you go to the exam. Izuku took the package. Sir, I didn't get you anything. Your success is my payment. Open it. Izuku tore the paper. Inside was a high-collared, green compression shirt. The fabric was sleek, woven with a subtle denim pattern. It is a base layer, Jeanist explained. Armored weave. Fire-resistant. Shock-absorbent. Wear it under your track suit for the exam. It will remind you. Remind me of what? That you are covered. That you are supported. That even when you are alone in the exam, the threads of your training are wrapped around you. Izuku ran his hand over the fabric. Thank you? I don't know how to repay you. Pass, Jeanist said. And do it with style. Sector 8, The Inheritance, the morning of the exam, February 26th. The morning of the UA entrance exam. The sun was rising over Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. It was beautiful. Not a scrap of trash remained. The sand was pristine. All Might stood by the water, looking at the sunrise. Oh my goodness! All Might yelled as Izuku arrived. All Might transformed into his buff form. Look at this beach. It is spotless. And look at you. Izuku stood on the seawall. He was wearing the black middle school uniform, but underneath, he felt the tight embrace of Jeanist's compression shirt. He jumped down, landing softly in the sand. I did it, All Might. You did more than that. You went beyond. Plus ultra. All Might laughed, then coughed, reverting to his skinny form. You have followed the schedule to the letter. You have mastered the duality of power and control. All Might reached into his pocket and pulled out a single strand of golden hair. It is time, Midoriya Izuku. You have built the vessel. Now you must fill it. All Might held out the hair. Eat this. Izuku blinked. The majestic atmosphere popped like a balloon. Excuse me? It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it contains my DNA. All Might said frantically. There's no time for a ceremony. The exam starts in 2 hours. Eat the hair. Izuku stared at the hair. It was gross. It was weird, but it was the key. A hero does what is necessary, Izuku muttered. He took the hair. He didn't hesitate. He swallowed it dry. He gagged a little. Disgusting, Izuku choked out. The power will take a few hours to digest and manifest, All Might explained, clapping his hands. By the time the practical exam starts, you should feel it. A warmth in your stomach. A fire. All Might placed both hands on Izuku's shoulders. He looked deep into Izuku's eyes. Midoriya. You have 2 mentors. One taught you to smash. one taught you to bind. But today you are either of us, All Might smiled. Today you are you. Go show them what the next generation looks like. Izuku nodded. He felt a warmth spreading in his chest. Maybe it was the hair. Maybe it was the pride. I will. He turned and faced the city. The UA High School building was visible in the distance, a glass fortress on a hill. Izuku checked his watch. He checked his collar. He checked his posture. He began to walk. Sector 9, the entrance. The gates of UA were massive. Hundreds of students were streaming in. Izuku walked through the crowd. He heard the whispers. Look at that guy. He looks intense. Is that a pro's sidekick? Izuku kept his eyes forward. He didn't look at the ground. Out of my way, Deku. Bakugo was behind him. Izuku stopped. He didn't turn around. Good luck, Kaken, Izuku said. Don't mock me, Bakugo growled, walking past him and bumping his shoulder. Izuku absorbed the impact, his core twisting slightly to nullify the force. He didn't stumble. He took a step forward. And then, he tripped. It was a loose cobblestone. Even the best training couldn't account for bad pavement. Izuku pitched forward. Oh no. I'm going to fall. I'm going to ruin the suit. I'm going to look like an idiot. He braced for impact. But he didn't hit the ground. He was floating. Are you okay? A bubbly voice. Izuku looked around. He was hovering inches off the pavement. A girl with a round face and brown hair was touching his backpack. She released him, and he landed gracefully on his feet. It's my quirk, she said, smiling. Sorry for using it without asking. But it would be bad luck to fall, right? Izuku looked at her. The old Izuku would have turned red, stammered, and fainted. A girl. She touched me. She talked to me, but the new Izuku felt the compression shirt hugging his chest. He heard jeanist's voice. A hero must be courteous. A hero must project stability. Izuku straightened his jacket. He offered a small, polite bow. Thank you, Izuku said, his voice smooth. That was a very elegant save. Your control is impressive. The girl blinked, her cheeks turning pink. Oh. Thanks. I'm Uraraka Ochako, Midoriya Izuku. Best of luck inside. He gave her a curt nod and walked toward the building. Uraraka stood there, watching him go. Wow, she whispered. He seemed really cool. Like a celebrity. Izuku walked into the auditorium. His heart was screaming. Oh my god, I talked to a girl, I didn't stutter, I didn't die, thank you jeanist, thank you All Might. But on the outside, he was a statue of emerald calm. He took his seat. President Mike walked onto the stage. Everybody say hey. Silence. Tough crowd. Izuku pulled out a notebook. But instead of frantically scribbling, he opened it to a fresh page. He uncapped his pen. Written exam, complete. Physical conditioning, complete. Mental preparation, complete. He looked at his hand. The warmth in his stomach was growing. It was becoming a heat. A roar. One for All was waking up, and Izuku Midoriya was ready to stitch his name into history. The auditorium of UA was a cathedral of anticipation, filled with the hushed anxieties of 1,000 hopefuls. Izuku sat in the middle of a row, his posture impeccable, a stark contrast to the slouched, nervous energy radiating from the students around him. President Mick's voice boomed through the speakers, explaining the rules of the practical exam. Robots. Points. Destroy them. Excuse me. A tall boy with glasses and engines in his calves stood up, his arm chopping the air like a metronome. You said there are 4 types of robots, but the handout only lists 3. If this is a misprint, it is a shameful error for a prestigious school like UA. He turned, pointing an accusing finger directly at Izuku. And you! With the green hair. Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't jump. He slowly turned his head, locking eyes with Tenya Ida. You've been sitting there with an unnerving stillness this entire time, Ida declared, his voice echoing. It's distracting. If you think you're too good for this, perhaps you should leave. The auditorium went silent. All eyes were on Izuku. The old Izuku would have melted into a puddle of shame, but Izuku felt the stiff collar of his uniform against his neck. He remembered jeanist's lesson, when challenged, do not defend. Reframe. Izuku stood up. His movement was smooth, fluid. I apologize if my focus disturbs you, Izuku said, his voice projecting clearly without shouting. I am merely visualizing the battlefield. As for being too good, none of us are heroes yet. We are all just applicants. He sat back down. A murmur went through the crowd. Whoa, he shut that guy down. So cool. Ida blinked, taken aback. He adjusted his glasses, muttered a quick apology accepted, and sat down, looking flustered. Present Mike laughed nervously. Okay. Calm down, listeners. The fourth robot is a 0-pointer. An obstacle. Just avoid it. Now, off to your battle centers. The arena, Battle Center B. The bus ride was quiet. Izuku sat near the back, closing his eyes. He could feel it now. The warmth All Might had promised was no longer warmth. It was a sun trapped in his gut. It was roiling, expanding, threatening to tear him apart from the inside. One for all. It felt heavy. Like wearing a suit of armor made of pure energy. The bus stopped. The students poured out into a replica city district. It was massive, a sprawling urban jungle of concrete and steel. Izuku stood at the gate. He was wearing his green tracksuit, but underneath was the armored weave compression shirt jeanist had given him. Around his waist was a utility belt containing a spool of high-tensile wire, a support item jeanist had insisted he register. Support item, binding wire, jeanist had said. The exam allows support items if registered beforehand. Use it. It will give you options beyond breaking your own bones. Izuku took a deep breath. I have the power. I have the tools. Start. Present Mick's voice screamed from a tower. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real battles. Izuku moved. While the other students hesitated, confused by the lack of a buzzer, Izuku sprinted. He didn't just run, he launched himself. The months of leg training on the beach kicked in. He was fast. He was the first one into the city. Robot. 1 point. 3 o'clock. A green, tank-treaded drone rolled out from an alley. Target acquired, it beeped. Izuku didn't slow down. He couldn't use one for all yet. He didn't know how to control it. All Might said clench your butt cheeks and yell smash, but jeanist said tension is control. Izuku reached for his wire. He whipped it out, aiming for the robot's visual sensor. The wire wrapped around the robot's head. Izuku planted his feet, pivoted, and yanked. The robot was top-heavy. It crashed onto its side, sparks flying, but it wasn't destroyed. It was just down. I need to finish it. Izuku rushed in. He saw a panel on the robot's chassis that looked loose. He jammed his metal-soled boot into the gap and kicked. Crack. The panel gave way, severing the internal wiring. The robot powered down. 1 point, Izuku panted. It was slow. Too slow. Behind him, explosions rocked the street. Bakugo flew past, blasting a 3-pointer into scrap metal. Out of my way, DKU. Other students with combat quirks, lasers, hardening, telekinesis, were tearing through the robots. Izuku gritted his teeth. Without a strength quirk, I'm at a disadvantage. My wire is for capture, not destruction. I need to use the environment. He ran down a side street. A 2-pointer, a scorpion-like walker, appeared. Izuku looked up. A fire escape. He threw his wire, wrapping it around the metal railing above. He engaged the motorized spool on his belt, a simple mechanism he'd built from trash. It pulled him up. As the robot passed underneath, Izuku dropped. He landed on its back. Weak point, weak point. He found the joint between the head and the body. He jammed his wire into the gears, winding it tight until the friction caused the motor to seize and smoke. 2 points. Total 3. This wasn't enough. He could hear the scores being shouted by other students. 28. 32. 45. Izuku was falling behind. The tactical, jeanist-style approach was efficient for neutralizing villains, but this exam was about destruction. It was designed for All Might, not jeanist. I have to use it. I have to use one for all. He stopped in the middle of an intersection. He closed his eyes and tried to summon the power. The sun in his gut flared. Pain. It wasn't a flow. It was an explosion inside his veins. His arm throbbed as red lines appeared on his skin. Too much. Too much tension. Help! Izuku snapped his eyes open. The ground shook. Shadows stretched long across the avenue. The zero-pointer had arrived. It was colossal. A moving skyscraper of green metal, towering over the buildings. Its massive treads crushed the pavement, sending debris flying. The other students were running. Run away! It's huge! That's not an obstacle, that's a monster! Izuku turned to run. That was the logical choice. It was worth 0 points. There was no strategic value in engaging, but then he saw her, the girl from the gate. Uraraka. She was trapped under a pile of rubble. She was trying to lift a slab of concrete, but her leg was pinned. The zero-pointer was looming over her, its massive fist raising for a strike that would crush the entire block. Izuku's feet stopped. Jeanist taught me self-preservation. Jeanist taught me to assess risk. All Might taught me to move. Izuku turned around. Run! He screamed at the other students, but he was already moving toward the robot. He sprinted toward the rubble. He couldn't lift the slab. Not without the power. Hey! Izuku grabbed the slab. He focused. One for all. Just 5%. No. I don't know how to dial it down. He channeled the power into his legs. Smash! He leaped. The pavement shattered beneath him. He rocketed upward, soaring past the robot's waist, past its chest, past its head. He was flying. I'm so high up. The air rushed past his ears. He looked down at the massive metal face of the zero-pointer. How do I land? How do I attack? He remembered All Might's words. Clench your buttocks and yell inside your heart. He remembered jeanist's words. Distribute the tension. If you put all the stress on one point, the fabric tears. Izuku drew back his right arm. The power surged. The red lines glowed brighter, crackling with yellow lightning. If I punch with everything, my arm will explode. I have to bind the power. I have to wrap it. Izuku visualized his own muscles as cables. He imagined jeanist's denim threads wrapping around his bones, reinforcing them. Tighten the weave, Detroit. He swung. Smash! His fist connected with the robot's face. The impact was deafening. The metal crumpled like tin foil. A shockwave blasted outward, shattering windows in the surrounding buildings. The massive head of the robot was caved in, sent flying backward off its chassis. The zero-pointer began to fall, exploding internally. Izuku hung in the air for a second, suspended in victory. Then the pain hit. His right arm was purple. Broken. But not gone. I didn't blow it off. It's just fractured. Then, gravity took over. He was falling. Fast. Oh God. My legs. I used the power in my legs to jump. They're broken too. He looked down. His legs were flailing uselessly. I'm going to hit the ground. I'm going to die. He saw Uraraka below, watching him fall. Think. What would jeanist do? A hero uses his tools. Izuku reached for his belt with his left hand, his only good limb. He grabbed the spool of wire. Binding. Anchor. He threw the wire hook toward a lamppost as he plummeted. The hook caught. The wire went taut. Snap. The force of the fall was too great. The wire didn't break, but it yanked Izuku sideways violently. He swung like a wrecking ball, smashing through a second-story window of a concrete building. He tumbled across the floor of an empty office, crashing into a wall. Silence. Time's up. President Mike yelled. Izuku lay in the debris. Dust swirled around him. His right arm was broken. His legs were broken. His left shoulder was dislocated from the wire jerk, but he was alive. He looked up at the ceiling. That was not stylish, he wheezed. The aftermath, the infirmary, the recovery girl's office smelled of disinfectant and gummy bears. Izuku lay on a bed, his limbs encased in casts. The door opened. Best Jeanist walked in. He wasn't wearing his hero costume. He was in a civilian trench coat and a scarf that covered half his face. But the aura of disappointment was palpable. Jeanist. Izuku croaked. Jeanist stood by the bed. He looked at the X-rays on the wall. A comminuted fracture of the right humerus, Jeanist read aloud. Bilateral fractures of the femur. Dislocated shoulder. And multiple lacerations. He turned to Izuku. His green eyes were cold. I spent 10 months teaching you to be a scalpel. And you went out there and acted like a grenade. I had to, Izuku whispered. She was going to die. The girl? Jeanist asked. Uraraka Ochako. Yes. I saw the footage. Jeanist pulled up a chair and sat down. He sighed, the sound heavy and tired. You saved her. That is undeniable. But look at yourself, Midoriya. Jeanist gestured to the casts. This power, this dormant quirk you claim to have. Jeanist leaned in close. It fits you like a suit 3 sizes too big. It hangs off you. It trips you. And today, it nearly strangled you. Izuku looked away, ashamed. I tried to control it. I tried to visualize the threads. But it was too much. You tried to weave a tapestry with a sledgehammer, Jeanist corrected. But, Jeanist reached out and gently touched the cast on Izuku's arm. I noticed something. In the slow-motion replay, Izuku looked back up. Just before impact, Jeanist said softly, you didn't just punch. You twisted your wrist. You tried to create a spiral to dissipate the force back into your own shoulder rather than taking the full brunt on the elbow. It failed, mostly. But the intent was there. Jeanist stood up. It was ugly. It was horrifying. It was a fashion disaster of the highest order. He walked to the door. But you didn't die. And neither did she. Jeanist paused at the threshold. Rest, Midoriya. When you heal, we are going back to basics. If you are going to wear a quirk that heavy, we need to stitch your body together with something stronger than denim. He left. Izuku lay there, tears pricking his eyes. He hadn't been expelled from the mentorship. A moment later, the door creaked open again. I am here, to sneak in. All Might poked his skeletal head in. Young Midoriya. All Might rushed to the bed. I saw everything. That smash. It was magnificent. It was moving. It was, well, you broke everything, but the spirit was there. All Might, Izuku smiled weakly. I got 0 points. Points? All Might laughed. Who cares about villain points? You faced the ultimate obstacle to save a life. That is the essence of heroism, but the rules are flexible for those who embody the school motto. All Might gave a thumbs up. Just wait for the letter. I have a feeling the judges saw what I saw. 1 week later, the letter arrived. A holographic projection of All Might shouted the results. 60 rescue points. Izuku Midoriya, you pass, Izuku cried. His mother cried. They hugged in the hallway, sobbing enough tears to flood the apartment. Then, the phone rang. It was Jeanist. Congratulations, the smooth voice said. Now, report to the agency. We need to redesign your costume. If you are going to UA, you are not wearing that green bunny suit I saw in your sketchbook. April. The first day of UA, the cherry blossoms were falling. Izuku walked through the gates of UA High, his new uniform crisp and perfectly fitted. He found Class 1A. The door was massive. He opened it. Remove your foot from the desk. Ha! You wanna fight, Four Eyes? It was happening again. Ida and Bakugo were arguing. Izuku stepped in. Oh! It's you! Ida spun around. He marched over to Izuku. Midoriya Izuku. I misjudged you at the entrance exam. You perceived the true nature of the test while I was blinded by the surface rules. I am Tenya Ida. Hi Ida, Izuku said, bowing politely. Bakugo sat at his desk, staring at Izuku. He was quiet. Too quiet. Deku, Bakugo muttered. You got in. I did, Izuku said, meeting his gaze. If you think that lucky punch makes you better than me. It doesn't, Izuku interrupted. It just means I'm here. Before Bakugo could explode, the door slid open. A yellow sleeping bag rolled in. If you're here to make friends, go somewhere else. Shota Aizawa emerged from the cocoon. He looked tired, disheveled, and generally unimpressed. I'm your homeroom teacher. Put these on and meet me on the field. He held up the PE uniforms. The quirk apprehension test. The class stood on the field. Aizawa explained the test. Quirk use allowed. Last place gets expelled. Expelled? Uraraka gasped. But it's the first day. UA is not for the faint of heart, Aizawa droned. Midoriya. You finished first in the practical, rescue points included. Throw this ball. Izuku walked to the circle. He held the ball. I can't use 100%. I'll break my arm again. And jeanist will kill me. He looked at the ball. He looked at his arm. He remembered the feeling of the spiral jeanist had mentioned. Jeanist uses threads to support heavy loads. He creates external tension. Izuku reached into his pocket. He pulled out a roll of support tape, the kind Aizawa wore around his neck, though Izuku's was a cheaper, disposable version he had requested permission to use. What is he doing? Ida asked. Izuku wrapped the tape tightly around his right arm, from wrist to elbow. He pulled it tight, creating a compression sleeve. Binding. Bracer, he whispered. He wound up. He activated one for all. But not in the whole arm. Just in the fingertips. Smash. The ball flew. Aizawa stared. He didn't break his arm? The ball soared. It landed. 705.3 meters, Aizawa read from his device. The class gasped. He beat Bakugo. Without an explosion, Izuku stood there. His finger was purple. Broken. But just one finger. And the tape had absorbed some of the shockwave, saving his wrist. He turned to Aizawa. I can still move, sensei. Aizawa grinned, a terrifying expression. Ho! Bakugo stood frozen. His brain was trying to process the data. Deku has a quirk? And he beat me? DKU. Bakugo launched himself. Explosions flared. Tell me what's going on, you bastard. Izuku didn't flinch. He saw the trajectory. But before they could collide, Aizawa's capture scarf wrapped around Bakugo, nullifying his quirk. Stop it, Aizawa said, his hair floating. Don't make me use my quirk so much. I have dry eye. He released Bakugo. We're wasting time. Next event. The costume reveal, later that week. Foundational Heroes Studies. I am here. Coming through the door like a normal person, All Might burst in. The class cheered. Battle training. And for that, you need these. The wall opened, revealing cases with their costumes. Get changed and meet me at Ground Beta. Ground Beta. The students walked out of the tunnel. The costumes were colorful, unique, and flashy. Uraraka in her pink suit. Bakugo in his grenade gauntlets. Ida in his armor. Where's Deku? Uraraka asked. Here, a voice came from the tunnel. Izuku stepped out. The class went silent. It wasn't a bunny suit. It wasn't a simple jumpsuit. It was high fashion. Izuku wore a sleek, forest green bodysuit made of a matte, ballistic material. Over it, he wore a cropped jacket made of reinforced, dark indigo denim with a high collar that covered his neck and chin, mimicking jeanist style but with a utilitarian edge. On his belt were spools of high-tension carbon wire. His boots were armored with metal soles for kicking, but the most striking detail was the gloves. They were white, but with green piping that glowed faintly. He adjusted his collar, striking a pose that was 50% All Might confidence and 50% best jeanist cool. Whoa, Kaminari whispered. That looks expensive. He looks like a pro's sidekick already, Tsuyu noted. Bakugo stared. The costume was an insult. It was a fusion of the two people Bakugo hated/admired most. The colors of All Might. The style of best jeanist. You look ridiculous, Bakugo spat. Izuku walked past him. It breathes well, Izuku said simply. Battle trial, Team A versus Team D. Izuku and Uraraka, heroes, versus Bakugo and Ida, villains. The setup was the same. The bomb on the top floor. Izuku and Uraraka entered the building. Uraraka, Izuku whispered. Bakugo is going to come for me. He doesn't care about the bomb. He wants to prove he's better. So what do? We split up. I'll draw his fire. You go for the bomb. But can you beat him? Izuku checked the spools on his belt. I'm not going to beat him, Izuku said, his eyes narrowing. I'm going to bind him. Boom. The wall exploded. Bakugo emerged from the smoke. Found you. He swung a massive right hook. Izuku didn't punch back. He dropped to the floor, sliding under the swing. As he slid, he pulled a wire from his belt. He whipped it around Bakugo's ankle. Capture weave! He yanked. Bakugo tripped, slamming face first into the concrete. What? Bakugo roared, blasting the floor to right himself. You're too focused on the explosion, Kaken, Izuku said, standing up and backing away. You're leaving your threads exposed. Bakugo screamed in incoherent rage. Stop talking like him. He launched again. This time, faster. Izuku dodged, ducked, and weaved. He was using full cowling, or a prototype of it. He was channeling 5% of one for all constantly throughout his body. Jeanist had helped him unlock this early by using the metaphor of even tension throughout the garment. It wasn't perfect. He flickered. But he was fast. He led Bakugo away from the stairs. Uraraka! Go! Izuku yelled into his comms. Got it! Upstairs, Uraraka reached the weapon room. Ida was monologuing. Back downstairs, the fight was escalating. Bakugo realized he couldn't hit Izuku easily. So he stopped aiming for Izuku. He aimed for the hallway. He pulled the pin on his gauntlet. If you dodge, the building behind you takes it. Kaken, no! You'll kill us! Not if you dodge. Boom. The blast was massive. It engulfed the hallway. Izuku had to make a choice. Dodge and let the building structure take damage, potentially hurting Uraraka upstairs? Or tank it? Neither. Izuku grabbed a loose heavy pipe from the debris. He wrapped it in wire instantly. He swung the pipe into the blast wave, using one for all. Detroit. Deflection. The air pressure from his swing met the explosion. It didn't stop it, but it diverted it sideways, blowing out the walls instead of the ceiling. Smoke filled the room. Izuku was scorched. His jacket was torn. But he was standing. Bakugo panted, grinning maniacally. Still standing? Good. He charged. Izuku looked up. The ceiling is weakened. Uraraka! Grab a pillar. What? Just do it. Izuku looked at Bakugo. Come on, Kaken! Bakugo swung. Izuku swung. But Izuku didn't aim for Bakugo. He aimed upward. Smash! He punched the air pressure straight up through the hole in the ceiling caused by the blast. The pressure wave shot up through the floors, shattering the floor beneath Ida's feet on the top level. Debris rained down. Ida lost his balance. Now Uraraka! Uraraka used the debris as a baseball bat, hitting rocks at Ida to distract him, then floated herself over to the bomb. Captured. The buzzer sounded. Hero team wins. Bakugo stood frozen. His fist was inches from Izuku's face. But Izuku hadn't even looked at him. He had looked up. You! Bakugo's voice cracked. You ignored me again. Izuku slumped against the wall, sliding down. He was exhausted. I didn't ignore you, Izuku panted. I just had a job to do. Bakugo stared at his hands. He stared at Izuku. For the first time, the realization truly hit him. Deku wasn't a pebble on the side of the road anymore. He was a mountain. And Bakugo didn't know how to climb him. The review. Later, in the monitoring room, Momo Yaoyorozu raised her hand. Midoriya's strategy was risky, but his application of collateral damage control was impressive. He utilized best jeanist binding techniques to restrict Bakugo's movement, and All Might's power to control the environment. However, his self-sacrificial tendency is still a major flaw. Look at his arm. Izuku's arm was bruised purple again. Aizawa nodded. Correct. Midoriya, you rely too much on breaking yourself to fix the situation. That isn't style, it's desperation. Izuku bowed. Yes, sir. I'm working on the weave. Aizawa raised an eyebrow. The weave? The internal structure, Izuku said, touching his chest. Making it strong enough to hold the power without tearing. All Might, watching from the corner, smiled. He's learning. He's synthesizing. He's becoming his own hero. 2 weeks later. The USJ, the bus ride. Midoriya, Tsuyu said. Your quirk is like All Might's. Izuku froze. But All Might doesn't break his bones, Tsuyu added. And you have all those wire tricks. It's like a mix of All Might and best jeanist. Yeah. Kirishima chimed in. It's super manly. You got the power and the technique. Izuku smiled nervously. Ah, well, I try to learn from the best. They arrived at the USJ. 13 was explaining the facility. Then, the lights flickered. A black vortex opened in the center of the plaza. A hand reached out. Then a face covered in hands. Shigaraki Tamura, Eraserhead and 13. Shigaraki scratched his neck. According to the schedule, All Might should be here. The villains poured out. Where is he? Shigaraki sighed. Maybe if we kill a few kids, he'll come out to play. Aizawa jumped into action. 13. Protect the students. The warping villain, Kurojairi, blocked the exit. Greetings. We are the League of Villains. Bakugo and Kirishima attacked. You bet. Wait! Izuku yelled, but it was too late. Kurojiri expanded his mist. Begone. Izuku felt the world spin. The flood zone. Splash. Izuku hit the water. He surfaced, gasping. He was in the shipwreck zone. Midoriya, Tsuyu and Mineta were there. We're surrounded, Tsuyu said. Villains were swimming toward the boat. What do we do? Mineta cried. We're gonna die. Izuku looked at the villains. He looked at the water. He looked at his friends. Panic is a loose thread. Pull it, and you unravel. Izuku took a deep breath. Mineta, Izuku said, his voice calm. What's your quirk? Sticky balls. But they don't do damage. They don't need to, Izuku said. He tapped the spools on his belt. They just need to hold the tension. He looked at Tsuyu. Ajri. I mean, Tsuyu. Can you carry us? Sure. But where? Izuku pointed at the water. Into the center. I'm going to create a whirlpool. A whirlpool? Like All Might, Izuku said. But instead of just smashing the water, I'm going to sew them together. He stood on the edge of the boat. Get ready! Izuku jumped. Detroit. Smash! He flicked his fingers, just the fingers, at the water surface with 100% power. The pressure wave was massive. It created a hole in the water, forcing the surrounding lake to rush in to fill the void. A massive vortex formed. The villains were sucked in. Now, Mineta! Throw them! Mineta threw his sticky spheres into the vortex. The villains collided, sticking together in a massive, groaning ball of limbs and water. Tsuyu, grab us! Tsuyu launched her tongue, grabbing Izuku and Mineta, and leaped away to the shore. Izuku looked back. The villains were trapped, bobbing in the water like a grotesque buoy. That was effective, Tsuyu noted. Izuku clutched his broken fingers. It worked. They reached the shore. They looked toward the plaza. Aizawa was fighting. But he was losing. The Nomu, a bird-brained monstrosity, was crushing him. We have to help, Izuku said. Are you crazy? Mineta shrieked. That thing is breaking Sensei's bones like twigs. A hero doesn't watch, Izuku said, pulling a length of wire from his belt with his good hand. A hero acts. He crept closer. Shigaraki reached for Tsuyu. Game over. Aizawa erased his quirk for a split second. Izuku moved. He didn't punch. He didn't yell. He used his speed. He darted in. He whipped his wire around Shigaraki's wrist. Binding. Lock. He yanked. Shigaraki's hand was pulled away from Tsuyu's face just as his quirk activated. The decay effect crumbled the air, missing her by millimeters. You! Shigaraki turned his red eyes to Izuku. You're fast. The Noma lunged at Izuku. Izuku knew he couldn't tank a hit. He dropped to his knees, sliding under the Noma's fist. As he slid, he wrapped the wire around the Noma's ankles. He pulled. The Noma didn't budge. It was too strong. It's immovable. The Noma grabbed the wire. It yanked back. Izuku was pulled into the air, flying toward the monster's fist. I'm dead. Boom. The doors burst open. I am here. All Might had arrived. He wasn't smiling. He moved faster than the eye could see. He grabbed Izuku out of the air and smashed the Noma back. Midoriya! Are you alright? All Might! Izuku gasped. The wire! It's still on his legs. All Might glanced down. The wire was tangled around the Noma's ankles. Good work, my boy! You gave me an opening. All Might charged. The fight was brutal. Fist against fist. Shockwave against shockwave. But the Noma had shock absorption. It's not working! Izuku yelled. He absorbs impact. Then I just have to punch faster than he can absorb. All Might roared. But Izuku saw something. Every time the Noma stepped back to brace itself, the wire on its ankles tightened. The tension. Izuku grabbed the loose end of the wire, which was trailing on the ground near him. All Might! Punch him! Now! All Might drew back for a massive smash. Izuku wrapped the wire around a jagged rock and pulled with everything he had. The wire went taut. It caught the Noma's ankles just as it tried to shift its weight to absorb the blow. The Noma tripped, just a fraction of an inch. But it broke its stance. All Might's fists connected. Plus. Ultra! Without its stance, the Noma couldn't absorb the force properly. It was launched. Through the ceiling. into the stratosphere. Silence fell over the USJ. All Might stood there, steam pouring off him. He was at his limit. Shigaraki trembled. You cheated. That kid, he interfered. He looked at Izuku. You're not just an NPC, Shigaraki hissed. You're a glitch. Snipe arrived. Bullets flew. The villains retreated. The aftermath. Outside, the police were taking statements. Jeanist had arrived as part of the backup wave. He saw Izuku sitting on the bumper of an ambulance, wrapped in a blanket. Jeanist walked over. He looked at Izuku's broken fingers. He looked at the frayed wire on his belt. You engaged the ringleader? Jeanist asked. I had to. Jeanist looked at the hole in the USJ dome. You tripped the beast, Jeanist said softly. I saw the wire marks on its legs in the forensic photos. Izuku nodded. Jeanist placed a hand on Izuku's head. He ruffled the green curls. It was a good stitch, Midoriya. You held the seam together until the heavy machinery arrived. Izuku leaned into the touch, exhausted. I ruined the jacket though, Izuku mumbled. Jeanist chuckled. A rare sound. Don't worry. I have plenty of denim. We will make the next one stronger. He looked at the setting sun. You are becoming a hero, Izuku. A hero with style. Izuku closed his eyes. The thread held. The first step of a journey is often romanticized. Poets speak of the first step as a liberation, a leap into the unknown. But for Izuku Midoriya, the first step into UA High School was an exercise in tension management. It was an April morning, the kind where the cherry blossoms fell with a deliberate, cinematic slowness. The air was crisp, smelling of new beginnings and expensive pavement. Izuku stood before the massive, intimidating UA barrier, his hands gripping the straps of his yellow backpack. However, he wasn't gripping them with white-knuckle terror, as he might have a year ago. His fingers were relaxed, curled just enough to maintain contact. Shoulders back, the voice of Best Jeanist echoed in his mind, crisp as a fresh sheet of paper. Chin parallel to the ground. You are not a tourist, you are an attendee. Walk as if the pavement owes you money. Izuku took a breath. He was wearing the standard gray UA blazer. But unlike the other students, whose uniforms looked fresh off the rack, Izuku's had been adjusted. The standard issue is a box, Jeanist had scoffed 2 days ago, brandishing a measuring tape like a weapon. It does nothing for your silhouette. A hero must cut a figure, Midoriya. If you look like a sack of potatoes, the villains will treat you like one. The result was subtle but transformative. The blazer was tapered at the waist to accentuate the V-taper All Might had helped him build. The trousers were hemmed to the millimeter, breaking perfectly over his shoes, which were no longer the oversized red sneakers, but sleek, red athletic boots with reinforced soles, a compromise between Jeanist's aesthetic demands and Izuku's need for familiarity. Midoriya! Izuku turned, his movement pivoting from the core rather than jerking his neck. Oh. Good morning. It was the boy from the entrance exam. The one with the engines in his legs and the intense glasses. Tenya Ida marched toward him, his arms chopping the air with robotic precision. I must apologize again for my behavior at the exam, Ida announced loud enough to startle a few passing students. I misjudged the nature of the test, and I misjudged you. You perceived the true essence of heroism, self-sacrifice. It's fine, really, Izuku said, offering a calm smile. We were all under pressure. I'm just glad we both made it. Indeed. I am Tenya Ida, from Semi-Private Academy. Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya. Ida adjusted his glasses, scanning Izuku's uniform. I must say, your presentation is impeccable. Most students look disheveled on the first day, but you look prepared. Preparation prevents unraveling, Izuku quoted automatically. A profound sentiment. Ida nodded vigorously. We should head to class. 1A, correct? As they walked through the glass corridors, Izuku felt the weight of the warmth in his stomach, one for all. It was dormant now, a sleeping ember. He had spent the last month since the exam doing nothing but mindfulness meditation and low-impact quirk activation under jeanist's supervision. Don't let it flood, jeanist had said. Let it trickle. They reached the door to Class 1A. It was massive, towering over them, the barrier to entry Ida mused. Or just a door for giant quirks, Izuku noted. He slid the door open. The noise hit him instantly. Remove your foot from the desk. Ha! It is disrespectful to the UA upperclassmen and the people who made the desk. You kidding me? What junior high did you go to, you side character? Bakugo was leaning back in his chair, feet crossed on the desk, looking like a king bored with his court. Ida was looming over him, scandalized. Izuku felt a spike of old anxiety, the Deku reflex. He wanted to shrink. He wanted to hide. Tighten the weave, he told himself. You are not that fabric anymore. He walked in. Bakugo's eyes snapped to him instantly. The red irises narrowed. Deku. The room went quiet. The hostility radiating from Bakugo was a physical force. Morning, Kaken, Izuku said. His voice didn't waver. He walked past Bakugo's desk to find his seat. Bakugo stiffened. He was expecting the flinch. He was waiting for the stammer. The lack of it seemed to offend him more than any insult could. Don't ignore me, Bakugo growled, smoke curling from his palm. I'm not, Izuku said, placing his bag down. He turned to face Bakugo, his posture open but guarded. But class is about to start. You might want to take your feet down. Ida is persistent. Bakugo's jaw worked. You think you're big time now? Because you got lucky in the exam? Oh. It's you! A bright, bubbly voice cut the tension. Ochako Uraraka appeared at the door, beaming. The plain-looking boy. Or wait. She tilted her head, looking at Izuku. You look different than the exam. Taller? Just better posture, Izuku said, bowing slightly. Uraraka-san, right? Thank you for speaking up for me with the judges. President Mike told me. No way. You saved me. And that punch. She mimicked a smash. It was like POW. But are you okay? Your arm? Healed, Izuku lied smoothly. It still ached when it rained, a phantom throb where the bone had shattered. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. The class froze. A yellow sleeping bag, looking like a discarded chrysalis, lay in the doorway. A man with tired eyes and messy black hair drank a juice pouch from within it. This is the hero course, the man mumbled, unzipping the bag and stepping out in a wrinkled black jumpsuit. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. Time is limited. You lack rationality. He stood up, slouching. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Homeroom teacher? The class exclaimed. Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a stack of blue gym uniforms. Put these on. Meet me on the grounds. We're doing a quirk apprehension test. The locker room was a flurry of activity. I can't believe we have a test already. A boy with red spiky hair, Kirishima, complained while pulling on his pants. We haven't even had orientation. UA is known for its freestyle approach, Ida stated, buttoning his collar. We must be ready for anything. Izuku changed quickly. He folded his uniform neatly, habit drilled into him by the genius office, and placed it in the locker. As he pulled on the blue tracksuit, he checked the inside of his pockets. A small roll of specialized binding tape. Aizawa's capture weapon material was distinct, but this was a civilian-grade mimic, woven with carbon nanotubes. Jeanist had procured it for him. If you are going to break your bones, at least wrap them first, Jeanist had said. Izuku slid the tape into his pocket. Hey, Midoriya, right? A boy with blonde hair and a black lightning bolt streak, Kaminari, leaned over. I saw the entrance exam results. You got 0 villain points but massive rescue points. That's crazy. What's your quirk? Super strength? Izuku paused. He felt Bakugo's eyes burning into his back from across the room. Something like that, Izuku murmured. It's a stockpiling power. Stockpiling? Mineta, the small purple boy asked. Like money? Like energy, Izuku corrected. He zipped up his track jacket. The high collar felt reassuring, even if it wasn't denim. Let's go. The pea grounds were vast, open, and exposed under the harsh sunlight. Aizawa stood with a tablet, looking bored. A quirk apprehension test? Uraraka asked anxiously. But what about the ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for such pleasantries, Aizawa droned. UA's selling point is freedom. That applies to the teachers as well. He looked over the class with a predator's gaze. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance run. Grip strength. Upper body lift. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school without quirks. Now you'll do them with quirks. He turned to Bakugo. Bakugo. You finished first in the practical exam. In middle school, what was your best result for the softball throw? 67 meters, Bakugo scoffed. Try it with your quirk. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He stretched his arms, a feral grin spreading across his face. He glanced at Izuku. Watch this, Deku. Dai! Boom! The explosion was massive. The ball vanished into the stratosphere, riding a shockwave of fire and smoke. Die! Izuku whispered, baffled. Aizawa held up the tablet. 705.2 meters. The class erupted. 700 meters? That's insane. We can use our quirks as much as we want? This is gonna be awesome. Aizawa's expression darkened. The air temperature seemed to drop. Awesome, you say? He lowered the tablet. You have 3 years to become a hero. Will you have an awesome time during natural disasters? During villain attacks? Or acts of terrorism? He brushed his hair back, revealing his bloodshot eyes. The one with the lowest score across all 8 events will be judged as having no potential, and will be expelled immediately. Expelled? Uraraka cried. That's not fair. It's the first day. Natural disasters aren't fair, Aizawa countered. Villains aren't fair. Power imbalances aren't fair. It is a hero's job to correct that unfairness. If you wanted to hang out at McDonald's after school, you're in the wrong place. Izuku swallowed hard. The pressure was suffocating. But pressure creates diamonds, jeanist's voice reminded him. Or it bursts pipes. Be a diamond. Welcome, Aizawa smirked, to the Department of Heroics. The tests began. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida was a blur. 3.04 seconds. Like a fish in water, the frog girl, Ajiri noted. Bakugo blasted across the line. 4.13 seconds. When it was Izuku's turn, he stood next to Bakugo. Don't cry when you come in last, Deku, Bakugo whispered.